Let's get into a little RAS talk, man. I thought this was absolutely awesome that the RAS conversation got brought up to Goody earlier today. Give me another screen grab there, Tim, if you can. So let's go back to the ghetto, the gangsta himself here, Goody. All right, there we go. We're good.
Oh, is that the one we're going with?
That's the one we're going with right now. Okay, so here was Goody asked about RAS scores. And you guys have heard us when we mention RAS and it's baked into our draft board. How many times did we say early in the offseason, I don't think the Packers are using RAS scores, but they have their own athletic testing, their own system to determine that. We're using RAS as ours, right? And we won't go into all the details on how we use the RAS and the bonus system we utilize, but here's what Goody had to say about that.
Questions last year about the RAS score and how that fits in. Obviously, Stewart has a 9.99. I think Rashawn was a 9.95. In what ways do you use that as a puzzle piece? And how much of that do you have to be a little bit careful with, especially if production doesn't match RAS score?
Yeah, so we don't use RAS score at all. We don't have anything like that. We do have some analytic scores that our analytic people do on their own that measures, athletic traits and other things. But we've never really used an I know what that is. We've never really used that in any, whether it's free agency, the draft, or anything like that. So now I've come from the Ron Wolf, Ted Thompson, so like traits are very, very important to us. Testing numbers are important. And that's part of the changing world in scouting right now is, these guys are really picking and choosing what they do. We don't have universal numbers across the board like we used to. Which makes it tough. But there are some new technologies coming into play with GPS data and things like that you kind of have to try to make up for it. So the traits are really important to us, but at the same time, on like a cumulative RAS score, we've never really used that at all.
There's so much.
All right, so there you go. That kind of answers the age-old question there. Coach Lynn says Packers beat are stepping up their questions this time around. I thought they absolutely crushed it. I really did, man. And listen, we've been critical of it at times. Like, boy, can we ask important questions? Like, what are we even doing here, right? So the fact that we're getting kind of to the meat, as we say down here, to the meat and taters of the whole conversation, I love it. Absolutely love it. What do you guys think about that in terms of the RAS score? I mean, I feel like we've been on that from jump, right? Like, hey, they do have their own athletic profiling that they use. The other thing too is he said another part of that presser kind of made me believe that they watch the tape and can determine how fast someone is, as opposed to just leaning on the 40-yard dash. 210.
We'll call it the TAS score, the TED athletic score. That's call it what you want to call it. We all know that Goody's paying attention to things like this. He's not going to all in out publicly say that he's leaning on RAS. Of course, you wouldn't expect that from your GM. So. Whatever they want to call it, the Packer athletic score, whatever their name is, they've got their measurables, and they're probably looking at, more factors than we are when we're breaking down these prospects. So I just think it's Goody doing exactly what Goody does, saying the right things and keeping what's best for this organization in mind at the forefront. Yeah. GAS, Goot athletic score, Brambo. I love it.
It's the gas, baby.
Yeah, baby. All gas, no break. Let's go. Do-rag in full effect right there. Gotta love it.
Right. Emilio, you got anything else to add, man?
Yeah, just like I think you were going to hit on it, Clay, but the fact that like the Power 5 schools, things like that, they can get the athletic, kind of numbers from that, having the tracking and all that, GPS tracking and the speed monitors. So obviously you got to really do your research on those small schools. Maybe North Dakota State, any of the, anybody you're trying to get out of, D2, D3, you're going to have to really do some digging, but that's all fun of the game. I mean, that's why they brought in Goody, right? Because his scouting report was so clean. He had so many hits. He knows what he's looking for. I think that we really just need to trust him. I do think that we are onto something, though. I feel like, when we're kind of dialing it in, even Wildy's question of like, hey, you can't obviously take all your Senior Bowl players, but
right.
You likely draft those a lot. I think that we clearly hit that. We've been on that from the jump.
First of all, real quick, Greg got very upset in the chat that we didn't acknowledge that he did come up with gas first. It was before any of the other guys. So you guys are a bunch of copiers over there. And Ian the
Player.
Great's got a great idea. He goes, let's call it the Wolf Athletic Performance Score. You can't call them WAPs. All right. Emilio, cover your ears.
Call it RAP. Ron Athletic Profile. There we go. Ron Wolf, right?
Unbelievable.
The raps.
Be a crackhead. At home to the wrong stuff.
DJ Clayton in the mix. I love it.
Hey, all right. So let's move this thing along. For too far. All right. Next question. Give me another grab here if you can, Tim. Not that kind of grab. This is a family program, but that'll work. Here we go. All right. So, Goody on answering character questions. This is another big thing, right? We talk about the athletic score.
Character questions. We got to get serious. Let's go serious.
Get serious.
Business suit, dude.
So here he was kind of being asked about, how do you kind of weigh out those character questions you may or may not have about a player?
Physical stuff and medical stuff, Wonderlic tests, this, that. Is there any sort of questions that you lean on to try to gauge a player's competitiveness, how much he just wants to be a football player out there? Is there something that you lean on year after year you feel has helped you gauge that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, we do. It's their past history and what our scouts are able to determine while they're in the schools, and what the people that are around them say about them, how they handle adversity, how they handle teammates, all the things that go into that. That's really, now we do some psychological testing when the guys actually take the tests. That gives us some insight into some of those things, but really it's the boots on the ground and the guys that have, really invested in the people around that player and how he's handled himself in the 3 or 4 or 6 or 7 years he's been in college.
LeVay laughed when he said 6 or 7 years in college, right? He's so pissed off about it.
What do you think the psychological testing is? Do you think that's meeting with the team professionals, or do you think that's Wonderlic combined with
I think it's that, whatever it was called, the SI score, whatever it was, that, remember the testing they did that CJ Stroud that was the big, they pretty much all but confirmed. He had been in meetings all day. He was dog ass tired. He comes in, takes the test, botched it. He ends up being a great quarterback, right? So I think when he giggled there and or kind of grinned and said when they'll take it, many agents are like, my player's not taking that now, not after what happened to Stroud. So I think that's what he was referring to there, Tim, to be honest with you. Okay. Now, there may be something psychological that they do on the visit, but again, the player can refuse to even, submit a test there. Now, I will say this, as he was talking and saying, think about what he just said. We have all of these people going we have our contacts at the universities. We got guys going into the college realm and getting this information. And if there was a problem with Ted McMillan, do you really think that they would have taken him and brought him in for a top 30 visit? Wouldn't they have already found that information out and been like, all right, let's remove him off the board? Yeah. Here's what I'm getting at. It's almost like they brought him in to confirm, here's what we came up with. There's no personal issues there. Same thing with James Pierce Jr. We did extensive investigating on the James Pierce stuff, meaning I reached out to 3 different UT Vols insiders, one of which came on the show. Every one of them said, Bob, I've been covering him the whole time he's been at Tennessee. There ain't nothing there. Mm-hmm. And the whole he didn't show up to practice thing, what happened there? Like we said, he said, I can tell you right now that was a personal issue. I'm not going to disclose the details of it, but that's a nothing burger, essentially is what he's saying. Now, when you look at Ted McMillan, the video that surfaced of him saying he didn't like to watch film, literally of all the stuff that they've tried to do to bring him down the board, right, during lying season, the best they could come up with was a secretly filmed video his freshman year of him saying he doesn't like to watch film. I think he checks the box for me. I'm sorry. You go into an NFL locker room and ask all 53 guys, do you like watching film on your own time? They may say yes, but I guarantee you get a couple daddy sodas in them on Larry's dime. Thank you, Larry, again. What's going to happen? I guarantee you they're going to be like, yeah, man, I try not to. Hell, Kyler Murray had someone opening the iPad so it was showing he was logging hours while he was playing. What are we even talking about here? So,
they can't all be J Love, right? They can't all be sitting on the couch with wifey watching film, and Netflix at the same time. So we'll just leave it at that.
And listen, I do want that player that's a film junkie. Don't get me wrong. Yep. But you can't disqualify someone because their freshman year they said they didn't like to watch film. That's just
absolutely.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So,
do you think that Green Bay just as a destination, just as a reputation, is a self-filtering point for certain prospects where they think if you don't love football, you don't go to Green Bay. You know what I'm saying? Like if you just want to come in, like AJ Dillon. AJ Dillon didn't want the club scene. He didn't want to be, with the paparazzi. He didn't want to see the glitz and glams of certain big cities. He wants to play football. That's what they asked Tucker Kraft. They said, "Why don't you go home?" He goes, "I live here. I got everything I need here. I work out. I football." I said, "What about the big cities?" He goes, "This is the biggest city I've ever lived in. Like this is what I need." Do you think that there's a type of self-scouting or a type of self-evaluation that helps Green Bay look at these types of players and say, "Hey, you know what? I just know for a fact this isn't going to be a great fit because I can tell this is more of a city guy."
Right. I rock in the chat says, "I don't like mowing the lawn, but I do it." Amen.
That's why they hire us, Clay.
That's exactly right. That's why they pay way too much money for people like us to mow their lawn. No doubt about it. Good to see you. Appreciate you, buddy. All right, moving along here. Actually, that's going to do it for hour one. We're going to continue this conversation with, I think we got 2 or 3 more comments from Goody, and then we're going to do a 7-round mock draft on hour 2, but we'll continue this conversation with Goody, just trying to get a little insight right as the draft, approaches. And this next comment, he's actually specifically talking about the draft board. I think you guys will want to see it. That's called a tease. We'll see you in hour 2. Appreciate you.
For those of you listening on the pod,
welcome in hour 2. All right, next comment here from Gute is on the draft board. I thought this was interesting. Yeah, but listen, he's not going to tell us how his board lays out, but I just love hearing a GM kind of talk about the horizontal board because we mention it all the times, and it is cool how I'm hearing a lot more podcasts mention it now, and it's not because they heard it from us. It's just people are really catching on to how this process actually works. I think it's absolutely awesome. Here we go. Here's a Goody talking a little draft board.
You're picking in the 20s year after year. How much in years past have 3 or 4 trade-ups have shocked you that that changes your board when you get to your pick? And how much time can you spend on scenarios and if that might happen?
Yeah, so you're saying that somebody trades ahead of us and takes a player maybe we weren't expecting. Happens all the time. And so, we spend the majority of our process is really trying to get the board right vertically by position. And then, at the end here, we do spend a ton of time, obviously horizontally and trying to get that right as well. So, once you kind of get to that spot, you kind of work through those scenarios a little bit, what you might be faced with, but yeah, so to me, you've gone through it so many times that, even when it happens, it doesn't tend to, take you off out of your thought process because you've probably already gone through it.
There you go. And that's what we're talking about, the mock draft, guys. The mock draft came about way back in the day. Basically what happened was there was a guy that put out a mock draft guide. I can't remember his name right offhand, but Michael Lombardi's talked about it a lot. And GMs, I mean, this guy, he owned a funeral home of all things. I guess he had plenty of time just sitting around, plenty of dead time, sitting around at work, right? And that's the kind of sick humor you get right here on the show. So he's sitting around. He's like, you know what? I'm gonna start combing through and going through scouting reports and this and that. And I'm gonna put together kind of a draft guide and go through a mock draft. What are the team's needs? NFL teams back in the day actually used that guide to go by. And then they started doing their own mock drafts. I guarantee you the Green Bay Packers have done 500 mock drafts this offseason. And it's funny how some of the listeners get upset. And they're like, I'm so sick of mock drafts. I get it. It gets redundant. And like people said last night, you're talking about the same players over and over again. Yeah. And we're talking about different scenarios where they may go to this team. He may fall this far. You got to be prepared for every situation that could come into play. And that's what Gooden's talking about there. You've already walked through it. Nothing will catch you by surprise. Nothing. You may look up and go, I can't believe that player fell to us. You may look up and go, boys, we got to trade back. Every one of our top guys are gone. And he did say last year that typically you can get, he said typically in a normal year, every one of their first 3 rounds are top 50 players on their board. Emilio, you've been looking at the board more than anybody, bro. This all kind of rings a bell, doesn't it? And how you got to work the board and work through your mock drafts and kind of see, okay, we did it with Ted McMillan earlier, you remember? Yeah. We were like, what are the chances he falls to 23? Very, very slim. All right, we better really do some research on these other receivers to see if one's worthy of the 23rd pick. And if not, be prepared for Ted McMillan to be gone. If he falls in our lap, great. That's best case scenario.
Right, and that's why he's kind of scattershot with, his 30 visits right now. All right, let's cover our first-round basis. Who do we really think can fall? and then go from there. Then, we'll find a couple in the later rounds that we really like, we really want to get our eyes on. But yeah, I mean, even just that, it's just crazy once you start getting that information just from what you changed up today. I mean, there are people jumping like 2 tiers in the horizontal board. Maybe they were out like 90.1. They jumped all the way up to, 79.6. And you're clear up into another tier. You're in a new cluster. And I just, the fact what I did like what Goody said was the fact that they had it all squared away Friday.
Yeah.
And that they probably could have just taken the week off and then came back. So, because right now is when you can really mess it up. You're looking at it way too fine. You're trying to comb through, pick out one problem or one thing you really like. I think that, right now is that time you get your, what's DJ call him, play the one, your one red player, the one that you would not take
Red
no matter
star.
what.
Red star.
Yeah, and then the one your blue star, the one that you would absolutely stand on the table for you, and maybe that's something we got to square away before the draft. We all get one or two, and then cool. I think just those little things. That's why you scouted all year. Stand on the table for your dude, and go from there.
Yeah, that's one of the articles that we kind of wrote to there on the Patreon group. If you guys want to join our Patreon group, it's the best way to support the show. Got tons of access in there, different information. We uploaded another Chalk Talk segment. Next week, when we get back from Green Bay, I fly back into town Sunday. I think you do too, Emilio.
Yep.
Get back into town Sunday. My goal will be maybe by Monday or Tuesday, definitely by Tuesday, to start putting Chalk Talk episodes together of these prospects. It's going to be absolutely awesome. We'll go through and just show some tape of them and some of their highlights, that type of thing. What do they do well? But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about what he said there about moving around the board there, Tim, and in terms of maybe trading around? And like Emilio said, man, they said they could have took the week off. It ain't going to happen, but they could have took the week off because the board is ready.
But perfect example, real quick, Tim. Ty Felton, 112.8. He's jumped up to now 98.8. Jumped 2 tiers just because we got a little bit more information, squared the board away.
Yeah, I saw that earlier in the group chat. You got guys that are moving 100 spots right now, depending on how you're looking at it. So I think if you're Goody and the brass and you're in that war room, you have a plan. You're making a plan, but you're ready to pivot. You're ready to adjust at the drop of a dime. You could be 10 picks, 15 picks into this draft, and all of a sudden we're moving up or we're moving down. Or we're moving down significantly and picking up later draft capital. We're adding a 5th, a 6th, a 7th, to the board, and giving ourselves more ammunition. Or maybe, like you said, you've got that, your red guy and your blue guy. Well, you're going to move up. If you have an opportunity to move up, maybe you do. Maybe it's only 1 or 2 spots to get your guy. You never know. There could be a trade with, Indianapolis or somebody, maybe Ja gets packaged with some picks and, we move up to get our guy. I think it's important to, have a game plan, but be ready to maneuver and bob and weave as the draft unfolds. And I think Goody's ready to do that for sure.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, no, I mean, you guys kind of stole my thunder there. I will reiterate what Tim just said too, is we're not looking past the point that Jair could be packaged with something. I think Malik Willis could possibly be packaged with something. And that would be that would make me sit up in my seat for sure. When you get that kind of thing. And I don't want these things necessarily to happen, but it is a possibility. We got to be ready for it. I think we've done a good job on this podcast of getting you guys ready for the prospect of moves happening. We didn't harp on it. We didn't say like, this is going to happen. We know this is going to happen. All we said is this is the possibility. And I think we've done a good job of giving you a scenario and what to expect. So it just makes the concept even more fun, dude. I can't get over it, man.